Welcome, everyone. Good evening. Welcome to the Committee for Racial Justice. I'm Angela Scott, one of the steering committee members, and this is our monthly community meeting. First off, I'd like to say we know you could be doing other things right now, but you've chosen to be with us, and so for that, we are extremely grateful. We hope that this is a time for robust conversation, reflection, education, and healing. May this evening also provide a catalyst for action. The Committee for Racial Justice was formed 9 years. Actually, we had our 10th anniversary. So I will say 10 years ago, following a racial incident at Santa Monica High School, when a Black student unfortunately was chained to a locker by two white students who went into the other room and yelled "slave for sale." And there was a noose nearby. As what usually happens, this incident was minimalized by those in leadership as a quote unquote boys will be boys situation. CRJ was formed following that and has been working against racism ever since. We work primarily in the areas of education, housing, mass incarceration, and police brutality. Tonight's Committee for Racial Justice celebrates Black History Month and is titled, "Why Are We Dealing with the Same Issues Today?" So get ready for that. This is going to be a sit back, get your notepad out, take some notes, get ready for a lively conversation. Our guest tonight is Dr. Toni-Mokjaetji Humber, who is Professor Emeritus, Ethnic and Women's Studies at Cal Poly Pomona. She's the founder and curator of Where Black is Brown, the African Diaspora in Mexico. But before we jump into that, I'm going to toss it off to Tara Barustas, who's going to give us an update on our housing committee. And then I'll share an update, and then we'll be ready to dive into this lively discussion. Tara?
Hi, everyone. I'm Tara, and I'm one of the leads of the CRJ Housing Committee. And we focus on issues surrounding housing and racial justice and the intersection of those issues. Right now, we've been working on some advocacy around the right to return policy. For those of you who are not aware, the city of Santa Monica has created a policy for people who have been displaced by circumstances surrounding the 10 freeway and the redevelopment of the Civic Center area. So I can drop some links in the chat. If you know anyone who may have been affected by those incidents and would like to apply for the right to return policy, I can drop the link in the chat. From what we've heard, there's over 100 applicants currently at this, with the city's this list, and it will be closing February 22nd. So please make sure if you know anyone that wants to apply that they do it before February 22nd. So that's the latest from the Housing Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Tara. And I will now give you information regarding our police reform, the Public Safety Reform and Oversight Commission. We have two important meetings this week. Tomorrow, 7 p.m., the Use of Force Committee will meet, and we will be hearing how the Santa Monica Police Department is revising its use of force policy. And if you'd like to have public comment, please do so. I'm going to drop that information regarding the link to the Zoom, as well as the link to our website, so you can gain more information on the agenda for that specific meeting, which is Monday, and you will have everything you need to know before you go into that meeting. The next meeting, and this is all virtual, of course, our next meeting is on Thursday. That's going to be our general Public Safety Reform and Oversight Commission meeting. We have two hot topics on that agenda for the meeting. One is on the complaints policy, and another one we're going to be also looking at the vendor issue that's happening on the pier. Again, I'm going to drop that information in the chat, so look for it there to download and be in the know. And thank you so much. Please, please plan on attending and giving your voice to both of those meetings as we look to really try to reimagine policing here in Santa Monica. And now, without further ado, I'm going to toss off to Robbie Jones, who will introduce our guest speaker for this evening. Robbie.
Thank you, Angela. Welcome everyone for participating tonight in our Black History workshop. We are honored tonight again. We've had her before. If you guys missed it, you're in for a treat. Dr. Toni-Mokjaetji Humber, Professor Emeritus from the Ethnic and Women's Studies Department at Cal Poly Pomona. She's the founder and curator, as Angela said, of Where Black is Brown, the African Diaspora in Mexico that investigates the cultural influences and historical contributions of Africans in Mexico. She was a Fulbright Hays Scholar of South Africa to observe the social and political transition after Nelson Mandela became the first indigenous African president of South Africa. On that journey, she met Mrs. Winnie Mandela and was a member of the delegation that welcomed her to Sacramento, California that year. In 2016, she curated an exhibition of photographs and artifacts from her Where Black is Brown research at the Museum of the African American Art, Los Angeles, as well as a 2005 exhibition in Pomona. From 2006 through 2009, she co-led the African Diaspora in Mexico tours with Mother Taineta Mohammed, esteemed member of the Nation of Islam and wife of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Presently, Dr. Humber serves as Vice President and Scholarship Chair of Our Author Study Club, Incorporated, a Los Angeles branch of the Association for the Study of African American Life and History, whom I'm sure we have some of them on the call tonight. Since 1985, she has led tours that celebrate the cultural and historical accomplishments of the African Mexican founders of Los Angeles, and their descendants and African Americans who have contributed to the greatness of Los Angeles. Dr. Humber also serves on the Board of Trustees for St. Elmo Village Incorporated, Art and Community Cultural Center for Creative Expression. Now, that is the short version of her bio. It overwhelmed me. So without further ado, I just want to say we are really in for a treat tonight. I hope you put your seatbelts on because here we go. Dr. Humber.
Okay, let me bring greetings first, and here we go. I'm delighted to present this overview and analysis of Isabel Wilkerson's cast, as well as how the US caste system has been the origin of our discontents. I thank the Committee for Racial Justice in Santa Monica, California for the opportunity to explore this significant work. And I thank my two narrators, Robbie Jones and Craig Ali, as well as our text IT expert, Luis Dobbs, for their support of this. I begin with a tribute to those ancestors whose courageous and amazing deeds continue to shine the light of profound faith, determination, and resilience upon us. From the film Sankofa by Haile Gerima, I present Spirits of the Dead. Spirits of the dead, rise up, lingering spirits of the dead. Rise up and possess your bird of passage. Those Africans shackled in leg irons and enslaved, step out of the acres of cane fields and cotton fields and tell your story. Those tied, bound, and whipped from Brazil to Mississippi, step out and tell your story. Those in Jamaica, in the fields of Cuba, in the swamps of Florida, in the rice fields of Carolina, you waiting Africans, step out and tell your story. Spirits of the dead, rise up. Lingering spirits of the dead, rise up and possess your bird of passage by Haile Gerima. Our bird of passage tonight frees us to reveal long hidden truths and to tell our powerful stories. Ashe. We begin with an introduction from Isabel Wilkerson's book. And my narrators, are you there?
I'm here.
Oh,
here.
he said definitively. Thank you so much. Okay, here we go. In the summer 2008, the US Census Bureau announced its projection that by 2042, for the first time in American history, whites would no longer be the majority in a country that had known of no other configuration, no other way to be. Then that fall, in the midst of what seemed a cataclysmic financial crisis, and as if to announce a potential slide from preeminence for the caste that had long been dominant, an African American, a man from what was historically the lowest caste, was elected president of the United States. Go Obama. His ascension incited both premature declarations of post-racial world and an entire movement in the United States, a campaign led by the billionaire who is now in 2016 running for president himself. Robbie?
A low rumble had been churning beneath the surface. Neurons excited the prospect of a cocksure champion for the dominant caste, a mouthpiece for their anxieties. Some people grew bolder because of it. A police commander in southern New Jersey talked about mowing down African Americans and complained that the woman candidate, the Democrat, would give in to all of the minorities. That September, he beat a handcuffed Black teenager who had been arrested for swimming in a pool with or without authorization. The commander grabbed the teenager's head, and witnesses said he rammed it like a basketball into a metal door jab. As the election drew near, the commander told his officers that the reality television star is the last hope for white people.
The election would set the United States on a course toward isolationism, tribalism, the walling in and protecting one's own, the worship of wealth and acquisition at the expense of others, even of the planet itself. Shortly after Inauguration Day, a white man in Kansas shot and killed an Indian engineer, telling the immigrant and his Indian co-worker to get out of my country as he fired upon them. The next month, a clean-cut white Army veteran caught a bus from Baltimore to New York on a mission to kill Black people. He stalked a 66-year-old Black man in Times Square and stabbed him to death with a sword. The attacker would become the first white supremacist convicted on terrorism charges in the state of New York.
The year 2017 would become the deadliest to date for mass shootings in modern American history. In Las Vegas, there occurred the country's largest such massacre, followed by one mass shooting after another in public schools, parking lots, city streets, and superstores across this nation.
In 2018, outside Louisville, Kentucky, a man attempted an assault on a Black church. To shoot parishioners at their Bible study, unable to pry the doors open, the man went to a nearby supermarket and killed the first Black person he saw. An armed bystander happened to see the shooter in the parking lot, which got the shooter's attention. "Don't shoot me," the shooter told the onlooker, "and I won't shoot you," according to news reports. Whites don't kill whites.
Soon, a group of leading psychiatrists took the extraordinary step of forewarning the American public that the newly installed leader of the free world was a malignant narcissist, a danger to the public. By the second year of the administration, brown children were behind bars at the southern border, separated from their parents as they sought asylum. The decades-old protections of air and water and endangered species were summarily rolled back. Multiple campaign advisors faced prison terms and widening investigations into corruption. And a sitting president was being described as an agent of a foreign power. Since the time Cass was published, that twice impeached, disgraced former president has continued his tirade and assault on democracy and continues to rile up his sycophants with the dream of him becoming president again. It seems the 8 pillars of Cass explain the why and how this country is caught in a whirlwind of discontent, fear-mongering, hateful rhetoric, a treasonous insurrection at the nation's capital, and deadly threats and actions against anyone opposing his madness and that of his followers. The United States caste system provides the structural foundations that enable Jim and Jane Crow, the Karens and Bubbas of today, social and civil unrest, refusal to renew and change forever voting rights restrictions, vote tampering by 45's administration and state legislatures, and the unchecked murder of unarmed Black and brown people by police throughout this country. The latest offense against African Americans happened this week when the news noted 6 youth apparently orchestrated bomb threats against 19 HBCUs in January and on Monday and Tuesday of this week. Did you know they were labeled as tech savvy rather than as domestic terrorists? Pillar number 7 of Cass' 8 pillars explains terror as enforcement, cruelty as a means of control. The threats certainly were terrifying, but will not stop the forward movement of people of African descent in this country. This analysis of Cass will provide insight into the origins of our present discontent in the time of 45. You know who that is, right? The white supremacist movement and its sensibilities in the nation. Uh-oh, I'm not moving mine. There we go. Okay, this is, you're gonna have about 45 minutes of slides with me. There's a lot of reading because I excerpted from the book, but that's the only way I can help you understand. And hopefully if you haven't read the book, you'll read it. And if you have, you'll go back to it again. So Isabel Wilkerson, an amazing writer. And guess where she went to school? Howard University. Go Howard. We were both in the School of Communications. Obviously, I wasn't there as an undergrad. I went there as an older person, but she got her BA in journalism, was the editor-in-chief of the school newspaper Hilltop. She was the first African-American journalist to get a Pulitzer Prize, and she got it for The Warmth of Other Suns. That's all. It's an amazing piece. If you haven't read it, another one to put on your list. It was on the New York Times bestseller list, Oprah's book club. And Cass, The Origins of Our Discontents, our subject for tonight, was on the New York Times bestseller list and Oprah's book club. In addition, Ms. Wilkerson served as Chicago bureau chief for the New York Times, and she was Journalist of the Year for the National Association of Black Journalists. I can't talk about Cass without talking about a woman I admire, I call Queen Mother, Dr. Frances Cress Welsing. Some people know about her, many do not. She's considered controversial, but as I'm analyzing Cass, 30 years ago, she was saying things to explain our condition today. So Dr. Welsing went to Antioch College as an undergrad and at Howard University for her medical degree in psychiatry. After she got her degree, she decided she wanted to, I think her parents said you can go wherever you want, and she wanted to go to Germany to study the Nazis. And out of that came the Cress theory of color, confrontation, and racism. She talked about white supremacy, a psychogenetic theory, and world outlook in 1974. And then in 1982, she wrote the ISIS papers, the colors, the keys to the colors. And while she was at Howard, she taught but didn't get tenure because I think the Cress theory of color confrontation and some of the things she said really caused her not to get tenure, and she moved on and had a very lucrative business as a psychiatrist. So what did Dr. Welsing say? And I want you to remember some of the things she says, and then we can look at what Cast says. First of all, the term institutional racism, I was talking to my friend, Dr. Pamela Ash, who was my roommate at Howard and a dear friend, and I don't remember institutional racism really being used until the 2000, particularly since the time of the idiot. Well, 45, excuse me, I should say the idiot. Institutional racism, I don't remember that term being used. I don't remember white supremacy being used until relatively recently. She was using these terms in the 70s. She said, institutional racism is a local and global power system. It has nothing to do with you like me because I'm Black. She's talking the system that made you think that way, supported your thinking, and the system that made me be resistant to it. The system is both conscious and unconscious. We're talking about a psychological programming. She said, racism is a system for, and listen carefully, is a system for white genetic survival to prevent white genetic annihilation. This is a hot sentence here. If we fail to understand this, we don't understand what exactly is happening to the Black family, the attack on Black family in general, and the attack very specifically on Black males as husbands and fathers. The white collective is not going to change because it is a survival system as a tiny minority of people on the planet. And she said, institutional racism consists of patterns. There's patterns of perception, logic, symbol formation, thought, speech, action, and emotional response. And it's in all areas of people activity. Everything that is people activity, we find it there. And so she says you find it in education, entertainment, labor law, politics, religion, sex, and war. And I've expanded on that, and I've added a few others. I'm saying ecology. The ecology is the land we're on, how we take care of it, and some land gets better taken care of than others, and some land is used up and turned into digging sites for oil and what have you. The environment, who gets their trash picked up, what roads are used, why do we have the Santa Monica Freeway that went through a very thriving African community known as Sugar Hill? Health and medicine. If you haven't read Medical Apartheid, I ask that you put it on your list. It's an amazing book. But looking at health and help people in general, as where do you live?
Oh, no.
Medicine stable. Okay, housing, military, sports, technology, transportation, and transportation. In 1974, Dr. Welsing debated William Shockley, a noted, I think it was a physicist. He was a Nobel Prize winner, and she went on Tony Brown's Black Journal. And this is what she said about her theory. I think that even though most white people are not consciously understanding their problem in genetics, she says a problem, they are certainly aware that they are genetically dominated by people of color, meaning there are more people of color on the planet than there are people of European descent. That's why there's the statement that one drop of Black blood makes you Black, because people of color have the genetic capacity to annihilate white people. That means that Europeans would not be reproducing themselves. This was a hot concept for her. And so in the beginning, I said 2042. So if you saw Game of Thrones, a winter's coming, 2042, fear. Genetic annihilation is coming. But it doesn't mean that there's going to be a disappearance of people of European descent. It means that the growing population of people of color will overwhelm that numerically. And what did William Shockley have to say what he thought of Black folks? Shockley devoted the last decades of his life to a quixotic struggle to prove that Black Americans were suffering from dysgenesis or retrogressive evolution. That means we're going back in time. and advocated, listen to this, replacing the welfare system with a voluntary sterilization, bonus plan, which, as its name suggests, would pay low IQ women to undergo sterilization. We know that sterilization went on in this country. It went on in this country through the eugenics movement. We know that people that were considered mentally feeble were given, were sterilized. Sister Fannie Lou Hamer, as a young woman, was sterilized, and she didn't know. She had an issue with her stomach and found out later that she had been sterilized. I had a coworker who was Native American, and she found later that her sister had been sterilized, unbeknownst to them. So Wilkerson says she looked at caste systems in India, Germany, and the United States. After she wrote The Warmth of Other Suns, she said she did not use the word race one time in The Warmth of Other Suns. And she said she wanted to study caste, and so she goes to India and Germany, and of course the United States. She studied in London, Berlin, Delhi, and Edinburgh. She gave attention to the poles of the American caste system, the extremes. We know who's on the top, Europeans who have been beneficiaries. And then the bottom, my voice is cracking up and practicing so much, I'm losing my voice, sorry. And African Americans against whom the caste system has directed its full powers of dehumanization. All I have to say is George Floyd. And that term, when I read this afternoon, I thought, low man on the totem pole, that's the term that's used widely around, at least in the United States. And that means the lowliest position. It's really a derogatory term. And I was speaking to someone, we were speaking about the people in Alaska, this is many years ago. And they said, the person at the bottom of the totem is the strongest because he's holding everybody up. Oh, what a reverse in concepts. But we look at it as lowly because it's closer to the ground, as they're groveling on the ground. So caste is an artificial, arbitrary, graded ranking system of humans in society. It sets the presumed supremacy of one group against the presumed inferiority of other groups on the basis of ancestry and often immutable traits. How you look, your hair, your nose, your lips, skin color. Wilkerson describes foundational pillars of the caste. I can't report on her entire book, and I took that section that says the pillars of the caste. That's what this is about. So she says these foundational pillars of the caste and the fear whites have of losing their constructed and assumed privilege and domination over the darker peoples of the world, particularly in the United States. Where'd you go? I like this piece. Caste, she says, is the bones. Race is the skin. She has such beautiful imagery to help us understand this thing. Race is what we can see. The physical traits that have been given arbitrary meaning and become shorthand for who a person is. Caste is the powerful infrastructure that holds the group in place. So how you appear, that's your skin on the caste, but the fundamental pillars and structures that hold that group either in place or elevates it, that is the infrastructure of caste. I think that's brilliant. So she talks about invisible cues in race and caste. And so to cast the position that you're in. So the kinds of positions not expected to hold. She worded it differently. This kinds of positions a Black person's not supposed to hold. I put Barack Obama number one. Was he supposed to be 44th president of the United States? Don't we miss him? Barack, where are you? And then the latest, this last week, even I looked at MSNBC this morning, Brian Flores, a successful Black coach. There's only one in the NFL. Is he supposed to even have the job? Obviously, with the 32 teams, so that means there were 31 other coaches, and he's the only one, and they just fired two. You understand what I'm saying. Is he supposed to hold the position? And that's supposed to be a position also that takes intellect and planning. Of course, he was successful at, where was he? In Florida? The Dolphins, I think that's what it was. Okay. Okay, belonging to a neighborhood or a group, belonging to or not belonging to a neighborhood. Trayvon Martin, this month will be the 10th anniversary of that baby's murder. I labeled it, he was 17, walking to the store for Skittles and a drink while Black. Shot by George Zimmerman. Stand your ground. Ridiculous. Ahmaud Arbery, I know you saw some of that trial. If you didn't see the whole thing, I was glued. I call this jogging in white neighborhood while Black. He was hunted down by George and Travis Martin and William Roddy Bryan. He was murdered February 23rd, 2020. And ironically, when I add up all these people who died, a lot of them were in February. Black History Month, maybe that had something to do with it, I don't know. People who are not expected to speak with authority. This is so timely now. President Biden is looking for a new person to go on the Supreme Court. SCOTUS. Brilliant Black women considered for SCOTUS appointments. They are going to be challenged, every word out of their mouths. It's going to be interesting to watch, and we pray for whomever he selects. But we understand their intellect will be challenged at every step of the way, every decision that they make, because they're not supposed to be there. If you're not administered pain relief in the hospital, Blacks don't experience pain like whites. Again, I'm going to say medical apartheid by Harriet Washington. And she talks about the belief that Blacks didn't experience pain and all the experiments done on them. But anyway, we're going to fast forward to Dr. Susan Moore. This is tragic. There's a video of her, and if you look at it, I was choked up last night looking at this. Okay, December 20th, she released a video. She's in the hospital with COVID, and she accused the hospital staff of racist treatment and her doctor. Her white doctor dismissed her pain and concerns about her treatment as she lay in an Indianapolis hospital. She told him the medication that she needed. She said he made her feel like she was a drug addict. And unfortunately, Dr. Moore died December 20th, 2020. I don't have a lot of good stories tonight, but that one really got to me. Another question, the clues of where you stay in the caste system here. Is the neighborhood in a toxic community? Uh-oh, is the water contaminated? All I have to say to you is Flint, Michigan, and you can answer that one for yourself. Where, and I remember there was a place in, someplace in Louisiana, I don't remember the name of it now, but where there were factories along the Ohio River and the Mississippi River, and then they would take their excess, whatever it is, and it would roll down to communities that were poor communities, Black communities. We understand that's a serious piece. This one is timely. Will Black mothers survive childbirth? The medical health of pregnant women certainly can be tenuous, and particularly for Black women. Black mothers in the US die at 3 to 4 times the rate of white mothers, one of the widest of all racial disparities in women's health. I got this out of NPR. Woo. If you are a mother of sons, if you are someone who's married to a man, if you have nephews, if they're men and boys in your family, you don't get any rest, particularly if they live with you and they don't come home when you think they're coming home. I was talking to a friend of mine, and we've known each other for years, and we were talking about, George Floyd and many things. And I said, and I bet your wife doesn't sleep much. He said, yeah. I said, yeah, she's worried about you and your sons. And his sons are grown. It's something that women, and particularly Black women, they carry that, worrying, is this the time? So will I be shot by the police? Michael Brown, Ferguson, that really started, I think it's beginnings of Black Lives Matter. Maybe Trayvon might have been, but Michael Brown certainly sealed it. August 24th, 2014. Walking in the street with a friend while Black. He wasn't doing anything, just walking in the street. Police told him to get on the sidewalk. And these brothers, 18, 19, they're loping, doing their thing. Not only did they kill him, and I don't know how many bullets, I didn't read that, but his body lay on that hot asphalt for hours. His mother couldn't even go to him. We're going to get to a pillar that deals with dehumanization. Okay. Tamir Rice, you remember that little boy in the park on the playground by the slide? He had a toy gun. Somebody said that someone was in the park with a gun. The police were not there, not even probably 10 to 15, 20 seconds, and they shot him. They didn't ask, they didn't say, you could tell it was a little boy. November 22nd, 2014, Cleveland, Ohio. I call this playing on playground with toy gun while black. Breonna Taylor, 26, March 13th, 2020, Louisville, Kentucky. Sleeping in her own apartment while black. Oops, no knock warrant, knock, knock, knock. Oh, she didn't hear us. They barge in and she is killed. Then we have Dante Wright. You know this one. April 11th, 2021. Black while driving, he had expired tags, they stopped him, and he had a for missed court date. Murdered or killed or shot or however it was. Officer Kim Potter, she's been convicted, shot him, says she mistook a gun for a taser. I know a piece of plastic is a lot lighter than a gun, shaped differently. Everything about it is differently. We don't know what happened to her psychologically that day, but the bottom line is that 20-year-old is dead. And, oh, I'm sorry, I know you. And she said, I'm going to jail. She knew something. Had never had, I think, a blemish on her record. And this is one. But how do you make that mistake? We don't know, but we know. And if it were, these are not isolated incidents, is when you add them up and look at the collective, it's a pattern. Amir Locke, do you know him? 22. This Wednesday, February 2nd, last week, sleeping on the couch, wrapped up in a blanket, the police barge in, no knock. He moves, he has a gun by his side. He has a license to have a gun. He doesn't shoot it, he doesn't point it, and he's killed. I'm exhausted. I added up the average age, and the average age of these young people is 20 years old. I know when I was teaching at Cal Poly, I had students, and you know this, I had a couple of students who were from, I grew up on 122nd and Hoover, and these brothers said, well, we may not make it to 21. I said, what are you talking about? And certainly we know young people have written out their eulogies and all of that because they don't believe they're going to make it. These young kids didn't deserve that. Ooh, I'm exhausted already. Notions on race and racism. Condoleezza Rice, what did she say? I'm giving her a point. She said, race is a birth defect of this country. Go, Condoleezza, she got a point for me. A birth defect in the structure of the birthing of this nation. She knows that. Marian Anderson, matter of fact, she's on PBS. I think she's coming back again, especially if you haven't seen it, look at it, it's excellent. A wonderful contralto sang in the church and was recognized, and I guess she and her agent wanted her to sing in the Constitutional Hall in Washington, D.C. It was run by the Daughters of the American Revolution, and they told her no. So, hello, Eleanor Roosevelt. Got her on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial on Easter Sunday, and I don't remember what year that is, but I think it was sometime in the 40s. Sometimes, and I'd like this one also, she says, sometimes racism is like a hair across your cheek. You can't see it. You can't find it with your fingers, but you keep brushing at it because the feel of it is irritating. Oh, I'm going back to Brian Flores. He knew they may not want me, and there's something may be going on, but he got an email, a text he wasn't supposed to get. Confirmed what he suspected. How could he prove it? Until, I don't know, the coach which coach was it? I don't even know what the name of the coach is because I didn't follow that. But I know something was sent to him indirectly. I think that was a little divine happening there that sent that email to him. So he really had a clear picture, because this man had brought the Dolphins from losing to 2 winning seasons and almost going to the playoffs, and then you fire him, and then nobody's going to hire you. So he's taking it on. You have to admire him, and we wish him well. Toni Morrison, this quote, a friend of mine, I don't know if she's on, Sister Dorothy Will sent me this quote way back in the 90s. And I would use it in class. And finally, it took me a while to get what Toni Morrison was saying. Well, you know Toni Morrison, Nobel Prize winner, Pulitzer Prize winner, beloved, okay. My favorite one is The Bluest Eye. If you haven't read it, it's an amazing piece that fits right into this caste system we're speaking of. She says, the habit of ignoring race. Hold on. When you meet someone who's not Black, let's say, oh, you know, I don't see you as Black. How can you not? The habit of ignoring race is understood to be a graceful, even generous liberal gesture. If you don't see me as a Black woman, you just see me as a person. Yay. But she says, hold up. To notice it is to recognize an already discredited difference. That term has stuck with me. What is she talking about, a discredited difference? So this is what she's saying. If you say you don't see me as a Black person, you don't see me because you don't want to put all of the negative attributes that you hear, believe about Black people on me, because I'm a nice person. So you don't want to put that on me. But by not recognizing my Africanness, my heritage, and my culture and who I am, you enforce my invisibility through silence. And it is to allow the Black body, my body, your body, a shadowless participation in the dominant cultural body. And when I was teaching, I said, the shadow was, who looks in the mirror and they can't see themselves? A vampire. You're invisible. A shadowless participation in the dominant culture. I love this one. Look it up. And I think it's from a book called Playing in the Dark. It's somewhere in there. Just take excerpts from this and keep it and think about it. What does it mean to deny the existence of a person that brings with them everything about them? And you say, but I don't see you as that because you're my friend. Yes, you do. And tell the truth. Of the cast. Oh my God. Let's hear for Thomas Jefferson. I didn't get a quote about him and Sally Hemings. That's a whole other thing. The inequality of the white and Black races was stamped from the beginning. Professor Ibram Kendi has written a book, Stamped from the Beginning. He took that quotation and has a book out, and it's a book on race and anti-racism and all that. I just got my book on Friday, so I haven't had a chance to really get deep, but I'm going to get to it. And then Jefferson says, I advanced it, therefore, as a suspicion only that the Blacks, whether originally a distinct race, a distinct race, that means that their evolution is totally different, like 2 kinds of dinosaurs or something, from what we consider regular humans. Okay, that the Blacks, whether originally a distinct race, are made distinct by time or circumstance. Here we go, are inferior to the whites in the endowments of both body and mind, physically and mentally inferior to whites. Keepers of the caste, Jefferson Davis, President of the Confederacy. Jefferson regarded Black people as biologically distinct and inferior to white people. This is all from Stamped from the Beginning. And Black skin as an ugly stamp on the beautiful white canvas of normal white skin. Can you believe Jefferson? Yes, I can. And are there people, yes, who say these kinds of things? And are there people in the MAGA crowd, and even those not in the MAGA crowd, who still carry some of these belief systems? And it really works hard to purge these thoughts from your mind, I know. Lincoln, great liberator. There is a physical difference between the white and the Black races, which I believe will forever forbid the 2 races living together. While they do remain together, there must be the position of superior and inferior. Guess what he chooses? And I, as much as any man, am in favor of having the superior position assigned to the white race. Why are we surprised, Lincoln? moving right along. Ran across a couple of books, Capitalism and Slavery by the first president of Trinidad and Tobago, Eric Williams. And he says that slavery helped finance the Industrial Revolution in England, that movement of colonialism. And so this is my visual, the Benjamins in the background. There's colonialism, and then out of colonialism came slavery, and also the massacre of indigenous peoples. And who profited from this? Plantation owners, shipbuilders, banks, insurance companies, heavy industry, manufacturing. Capitalism is a global system. Colonialism was a global system. Institutional racism or caste, a global system. There's a book called Complicity I also recommend. I don't remember what year it came out. I think it was sometime in the 2000s. And it was written about the North is complicit in this racism and white supremacy that we have, that universities, we know Brown and Harvard and Princeton, insurance companies, they insured enslaved people, so they got big money. The ship went down, oh, folks get money. All of those wasn't just South, it was the entire states were involved in that. How Europe Undeveloped Africa. I haven't finished the whole book, but I use it in the class. I use the first few chapters. And Eric, Walter Rodney, brilliant young man. In this book, Angela Davis said about him, Rodney incisively argues that grasping the great divergence, that means the difference between the West and the rest. I like the West, meaning Europe, and the rest of the world, the rest of the colonial world, can only be explained as the exploitation of the latter by the former. Are you with me on that one? I had to throw that one in. And so in Caste, Isabel Wilkerson, I mean, I just enjoyed reading it. You just have to read this book and you have to take it slow, digest. She says there is the metaphor of the old house. So I found an old house. This is my metaphor. This is the United States underneath its little glossy covering, okay? The United States is an old house that structured its original design to be a caste system. It wasn't by accident. It was by design. They had the blueprints. They got the stamp. Say stamp from the beginning. And like other old houses, I have an old house, so I understand. I've remodeled and they found stuff in there. I used to have, I don't even know what you call them. It's a little ceramic thing with wires going through it. That was my electrical system. It was very archaic. Like other old houses, America has an unseen skeleton. You see my skeleton up there? I had to put a skeleton up there so you'd understand the metaphor. A caste system that is as central to its operation as are the studs and joists that we cannot see in the physical buildings we call home. Okay, let's get on with it. It is the architecture of human hierarchy, the subconscious code of instructions for maintaining our caste, a 400-year-old social order. I like this line. Looking at caste is like holding the country's x-ray up to the light. If you had an x-ray and you have something the matter with you, and they can't see it just by touching you, go to the x-ray, and then you're gonna find that's the problem. But we need to look at the x-ray of this country. And I put the founding creed and the principles of the United States, liberty and justice for all. All men are created equal, but fighting for freedom and democracy. Ideals that applied to wealthy white male landowners. It certainly didn't apply to indentured servants, and it certainly didn't apply to indigenous people, and it didn't apply to enslaved Africans. Finally, we're going to get the origins of our discontent, the pillars of the caste. I'm taking a long time to get to this, but we're getting to it. Okay, so she says, these are the historic origins, the pillars upholding a belief system, the piers beneath piers of the day. The Santa Monica Pier, and you know those pilings that are holding up that pier? These are the pilings and the pillars she's talking about. If you put a name on each one that is oppressive, you understand that within the structure of that pier, the foundation, there was corruption and corrosion. Okay, as these tenets took root in the firmament, it did not matter as much as whether the assumptions were true, as most were not. It mattered little that they were misperceptions or distortions of convenience. Here we go. As long as people accepted them and gained a sense of order and means of justification. Justification for what? For the cruelties to which they had grown accustomed, inequalities that they took to be the laws of nature. If you saw 12 Years a Slave, that's all you need to see. If you've heard Sankofa, when I gave, what did I say, the Spirit of the Dead, check out, I believe it's on YouTube, not YouTube, it's on Hulu or maybe on, any of those. Look at Sankofa and you see the cruelties and inequalities and these belief systems in this movie. Okay, moving right along. These are the principles upon which a caste system is constructed, whether in America, India, or Nazi Germany. Beliefs, here we go, that were at one time or another burrowed deep within the culture and collective subconscious of most every inhabitant in order for a caste system to function. A caste system and a system of oppression cannot be carried out unless you have people who support it, believe it, and carry it out. What was that thing on January 6th last year? That happened to be my birthday, by the way. He told us to come. He invited us. An insurrection. Actually, it was treason. They believed in this person. They still do. And obviously follow him. And so this is my metaphor for 8 pillars of caste. I'm really proud of this. It took me a while to figure this one out. Ironically, the United States Supreme Court, the building, has 8 pillars. Oh, joy. And Wilkerson has 8 pillars to her concept. So pillar number 1, it believes in the divine law and nature. That justifies the caste. Number 2, heritability, how you were born. Endogamy and the control of marriage and mating. Who can be married to one another and what the standing of the children. Purity versus pollution. Are you an untouchable? Occupational hierarchy. Okay, I'm going to go back to Brian Flores. He hit a wall in the hierarchy. No, brother, you're not going to be a coach again. Dehumanization stigma, you know what that is. All the caricatures, the names. Terror as enforcement, cruelty as means of control. Those calls that those HBCU universities had this past week and last month, they were terroristic. So I'm not going to say these young tech savvy boys will be boys. This is out and out terrorism, which leads to crazy people like maybe Timothy McVeigh, you don't know. But it certainly isn't, they're just tech savvy and no, it's more than that. And I was walking my dogs today. I hadn't been out walking. And I thought, and what about their parents? What did they hear in their homes? What were they reading? What were they listening to? What were they looking at? To think that this was cool. This is serious. And the last one, inherent superiority versus inherent inferiority. That at the onset, you believe that they're two kinds of people. Superior, brilliant, who get all the gains, and inferior and lowly, and who are the untouchables. So pillar number 1, divine law and law of nature. You have to listen to this stuff. The curse of Ham. You heard about this. If you are, Christians understand the Bible. The curse of Ham is now being executed upon his descendants. Like Thomas Cobb, defender of architect. The great architect constituting them thus suited to the degraded position they were destined to occupy. That ordained through God, they were to have a lowly, degraded position. Black folks. He said, this one you have, oh, Jesus, let the Negro have the crumbs that fall from the white man's table. Thomas, how can I make this up? This is Thomas Pierce Bailey, 20th century author. And so Wilkerson says, a caste system endures because it is often justified as divine will, originating from sacred texts or the presumed laws of nature, reinforced through the culture and passed down through generations. Wow. Pillar 2. Folks, I got 8 to go through, so hold on. Heritability. You were born to a certain caste and remained in that caste subject to the high status or low stigma it conferred for the rest of your days and into the lives of your descendants. There is no mobility through class. There is no meritocracy. How you were born is where you stay. And the elevated, fine. And what about those who pass? Or those who slip through? They get caught eventually, they're brought down. So the Virginia General Assembly, this is 1662. The Assembly decreed, be it therefore enacted and declared by this present Grand Assembly that all children born in this country shall be held bond or free only according to the condition of the mother. Historically, in Europe and other places, the children held the status of the father. But when you have a slave system, you go with the status of the mother because the white slave owner can impregnate her. That's more money for him. He's got another population. So this was a switch in this country of a social order for identity of children and family that changed up. And it says that not only was the mother enslaved, that her children were enslaved and their children's children were enslaved. It was intergenerational. This new law allowed enslavers to claim the children of Black women, the vast majority of whom were enslaved, as their property for life and for ensuing generations. It invited them, okay, I know they were invited. It invited them to impregnate the women themselves if so inclined. They were very inclined. That's why we look like we do. The richer it would make them. Here's one. Who sneaks through the cracks? The most accomplished of lower caste people have often found ways to transcend caste, but rarely. We'll take Jay-Z and Beyonce. Somebody doesn't know, another billionaire doesn't know them, may say a few things and hold them back until they find out who they are. Okay, Forrest Whitaker was frisked in the New York deli, accused of stealing. He was humiliated. I don't know if you remember that Oprah, this was way back in the 90s, Oprah was trying to, at the last minute, get into Hermes in Paris, and they wouldn't let her in. Oh, when they found out who she was, then they were dipping and bowing. The money they had, the fact that Whitaker was a dynamic actor, it meant nothing. They saw the exterior of them, the skin of caste. Neither wealth nor celebrity insulated those born to the subordinate caste from police brutality that seems disproportionately trained on those at the bottom of the hierarchy. All of that's not going to save you. Endogamy and the control of marriage and mating. This forbids marriage outside of the group, prohibits sexual relations, even appearance of romantic interest across the caste lines. The founders kept caste separate to seal off bloodlines of those assigned to upper rung offspring. Who's going to inherit the wealth? 41 of 50 states passed laws making intermarriage a crime, punishable by fines up to $45,000 and up. I can't believe that's right, but anyway, that's what I wrote. To 10 years in prison. This was overturned in 1967 because you know the Loving case. It's not until 1967, that's the same year that Guess Who's Coming to Dinner came out with Sidney Poitier. Same year. The Lovings, I believe they might have gone to jail. Mildred and Richard loved each other from childhood. June 12, 1967, the United States Supreme Court unanimously 9-0, that wouldn't happen today, struck down state anti-miscegenation laws, statutes in Virginia as unconstitutional under the equal protection and due process clauses of the 14th Amendment. And look at their children and their family. It warms your heart to see that. Finally. Pillar number 4, purity versus pollution. Uh-oh. Subordinate class is made untouchable. If you know anything about the untouchables in India, they're called the Dalits. They are the darker hued Indians, and they are relegated to cleaning privies and toilets and sweeping garbage off the street, never to move above that caste. And there are a few who have. All private and public human activities were segregated from birth to death, from hospital wards to railroad platforms, to ambulances, hearses, and cemeteries. In stores, Black people were prohibited from trying on clothing, shoes, hats, or gloves, assuming they were permitted in the store at all. I have an aunt, and aunt through marriage from Kentucky, and she said that she was born in Chicago, but I think raised in Kentucky, however it goes. She's passed on now. She said they couldn't try on hats, and this is the time when ladies were wearing hats. They had to put paper in the hat before they could try it on, if they let you in the store. Occupational hierarchy. I'm going right to Brian Flores. See, I didn't know his name until last week. Didn't know the man existed, but we know him now. I think he has a case of occupational hierarchy trauma. Okay. Denial of opportunity and access. Can I get an amen, people? African Americans were relegated to the dirtiest, most demeaning, and least desirable jobs by definition. Here's another one. Hold on. 1858, South Carolina Senator James Henry Hammond said, "That is a class requiring but a low intellect and but little skill." Low intellect and little skill. Its requisites vigor, docility, and fidelity. Mentally didn't have it there. They are elevated from the condition in which, hold on, in which God first created them by being made our slaves. Aren't you happy we took you out of Africa, out of the jungle, and brought you here to be our slaves? Insanity. And so pillar number 6 is dehumanization stigma. I had fun putting this together. I know everyone has seen these. Ironically, when I taught, I have a collection of some of these, not these particular items, but some of these, they call them Black memorabilia. And there's some toothpaste, I should have put it on here, called Darky toothpaste. Raise your hand if you heard the Darky toothpaste. Okay. And then it was changed to Darly toothpaste. So I was showing it in class. I have all my little artifacts here, and the students are looking at me. And when I picked up that toothpaste, I had some Asian students who got a smirk on their faces. I thought, oh, they know this. They might have used it. I had a student who was Chinese. He said, I just bought that toothpaste in Santa Ana. I gave him money for him to get me a tube. Darky toothpaste, and then they kind of cleaned it up a little bit. These things are still in circulation in some countries. They're caricatures, they're debased, they're dehumanized, they're degrading. You've seen all of this before. Of course, we know Hattie McDaniel, and she said, I'd rather play a maid than be a maid, so he can't be mad at it. And she was good at it, but you know, we wish she had another kind of job, but that job wouldn't come to her during that time period. Pillar number 7. Terror as enforcement, cruelty as means of control. That's what those bomb threats were. I just pieced together stuff that I know. Emmett Till. In my classes when I taught, my students had to go find that picture of Emmett Till in the casket. I wanted them to see it, to understand the terror that I still have every time I see it. The courage of his mother to say, and if you saw moments of courage that they had about women last week. And she said, I want them to see what they did to my boy. It tears your heart up. And I can remember as a child, I don't know if I said it to anybody, but why did they hate us so much? Because I remember bombings of buses. I remember the Little Rock Nine and people yelling and spitting and cussing at people. I remember all of that. Why do they hate us so much? And it's the toxicity of a caste system, that institutional racism that perpetuates that. But if you see, I put George Floyd on there, and then just before I finished, I put Black Wall Street. That's the last thing I put on there. You have the lynchings, you have the KKK. On the left, the 3 pictures, those come from Mexico. The man with his back just so beaten and badly keloid. That's the United States. You have a man in a truck hanging the noose out of his car. You have the KKK at the bottom. At the lynching, people are dressed up in their Sunday best. They're taking their children to see this. Body parts were removed. There is a museum in what's the name of it? And he said there are body parts there. So I went, I want to see the body part. But they said they had body parts. So when I say body parts, I'm talking about body parts, maybe penises, maybe breasts, maybe vaginas, testicles in jars. A friend of mine sent me an article several years ago. A professor, I don't know where the professor was, maybe out of Michigan, was talking about this. And she had a student who said, I'm going to inherit something like that. This is in modern times. Disgusting, but it's true. Tragic. Terror as enforcement, cruelty as a means of control. Ooh, we got to pillar number 8, inherent superiority versus inherent inferiority. At every turn, the caste system drilled into the people under its spell the difference due those born to the upper caste and the degradation befitting the subordinate caste. This required signs and symbols and customs to elevate the upper caste and to demean those assigned to the bottom in small and large ways and in everyday encounters. He must be held subject like other domestic animals, observed the 19th century abolitionist William Goodell, to the superior race holding dominion over him. The slave must be held subject like other domestic animals to the superior race holding dominion over him. Caste is fixed and rigid. Whoever fit the definition of white at whatever point in history was granted the legal rights and privileges of the dominant caste. It was set. Perhaps more critically, this is a piece, we're talking about psychological damage. Perhaps more critically and tragically, at the other end of the ladder, the subordinated caste too has been beginning, which all fall. Did you get that? So the upper caste sees itself as privileged, the lower caste sees them at the bottom of that totem pole. And it is a position that everyone in between knows they can't fall that low because they don't want to be like those Black folks. And they may use the N-word on that in terms of referring to them. It's psychological damage. We know the Dow test that was done for Brown versus Board of Education, the damage to children. How they see themselves in the present Dow test has been done, and we're getting some of the same results. How do you see yourself? How do children see themselves? If you haven't read The Bluest Eye, to me, The Bluest Eye fits on this. Chapter 3, first page on the right. The mother's name is paragraph, second paragraph. She says, we are ugly. We are relentlessly ugly. And when I first read that, I almost cried. And I have a student, he told me, Dr. Humber, why are you making us read that book? It's so sad. You need to read it. Because when Toni Morrison wrote The Bluest Eye, it was her first book, 1970, she said, I'm writing a piece about racism. And I'm writing about those the most vulnerable to its ills. And the most vulnerable people in racism are the children. And the most vulnerable of the children are little Black girls. Thus, you get The Bluest Eye. And if you haven't read it, if you read it a long time ago, renew it because it really applies to us today. These thoughts have not gone away. Okay. How do we know this country and other countries were often institutional racism? How do you know? And living in a caste system. Well, this is how I know. We had organizations that were fighting racism. Why would they bring about their mission if this thing didn't exist and wasn't suffocating? So you had the NAACP, February 12th, 1909, New York City. their work to ensure the political, educational, social, and economic equality of rights of all people. Their work to eliminate racial hatred and racial discrimination. If it didn't exist, there would be no need for the NAACP. Freedom Charter out of South Africa, 1955. And if you have a chance, just look at the Freedom Charter, some of the things it has, amazing. It said, excuse me, the people shall govern. What a novel idea. I'm in the country, I have the right to vote, I have the right to lead. Every man and woman shall have the right to vote for and to stand as a candidate for all bodies which make laws. Anyone can run for an office. All shall enjoy equal human rights. But that just touches my heart. I don't know if you've been to South Africa or not. This was the program from the ANC, but this was 1955. 1955, the year Emmett Till was murdered. This came out of South Africa. The United States Commission on Civil Rights. I never heard of it until I looked it up the other day. The Civil Rights Act of 1957 created the U.S. Commission, and it said, mission is to inform the development of national civil rights policy and enhance enforcement of federal civil rights laws. And I wonder what happened to them. And so they were looking at studying deprivations, voting rights, and alleged discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, age, disability, national origin in the administration of justice. You can take race, color, religion, sex, age. That goes back to institutional racism that Frances Cress Welsing talked about. Those were the categories. They are to do research. They play a vital role in advancing civil rights through analysis on issues of fundamental concern to the federal government. Okay, move on. Black Panther Party 10-point program. My midterm for my critical thinking in African studies class was they had to take the Black Panther 10-point program. They had to take the Freedom Charter, and they had to take the Civil Rights Mission and compare and where were the commonalities. They had some differences, but what was common among them? You look at what the Freedom Charter said, and they said, it rise, there wouldn't have been a Freedom Charter, there wouldn't have been a DP. We want freedom term our Black community. Amen, brother. We want full employment for our people. Is that so hard to ask for? We want education for our people that exposes the true nature of this decadent American society. Florida would scratch that one out. We want education that teaches us our true history and our role in the present day society. I don't want to be this shadowless being. I want to know how I've contributed and that I can be viable in my society. We want an immediate end to police brutality and the murder of Black people. That young man was shot on his sofa Wednesday night. We want land, bread, housing, education, clothing, justice, and peace. Is that so much to ask for, oh Lord? In a caste system, yes, it is. If you're Black, if you're brown, if you're LGBTQ. Okay, Association for the Study of Negro Life and History I belong to was formed in 1950. Dr. Carter G. Woodson, founder of Black History. Now it's the Association for the Study of African American Life and History, but I wanted to have this date 1950 to say how long ago that there was a necessity for this organization because it didn't exist. So in 1909, you had the NAACP, and then you get this. I mean, what is that, 6 years later? This one is about teaching, promoting, researching, and preserving African Americans. NAACP was dealing with the laws. I put the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters because I remember A. Philip Randolph. I think I saw a movie about them once, and he certainly was a figure in the civil rights movement. And I'm trying to think, was he at the March on Washington? He might have been. Southern Christian Leadership Conference, January 1957. Freedom Charter 1955, 2 years ahead of 57. And so, of course, Martin Luther King became the head. So it was a nonprofit, non-sectarian, interfaith advocacy organization that is committed to nonviolent action to achieve social, economic, and political justice. Why would they have social, economic, and political justice as a goal? It's because they didn't have it. That's how you know you had a caste. Congressional Black Caucus, March 30th, 1971. Finally, we had enough people in Congress that we could have this. Public policy and beyond. Southern Poverty Law Center, I've been there twice on tours with students. Is a catalyst for racial justice in the South and beyond, working in partnership with communities to dismantle white supremacy, strengthen intersectional movements, and advance the human rights of all people. Love that organization. Moving right along. HBCU Foundation. I didn't know there was one. I knew there was an organization because a lot of Black presidents visited 45 when he was in office. And Kelly, whatever her name, was disrespectful, sitting on the couch with her shoes off. Oh, you remember that? Okay. This organization was founded, according to the internet, in 1837. Wow, I didn't know Cheney University was the oldest HBCU. Howard was in 1867. I was thinking it was closer to that. This organization to provide Black Americans the most basic of human rights, access to full education. So this was in the North. Southern schools picked up. Divine Nine, May 10th, 1929. The Divine Nine women showed out for Kamala. Did you see that picture of all of them in their pencil skirts and their high heels and all their stuff? I bought me a t-shirt too. I'm an AKA. The Divine Nine celebrating our heritage. Now, some of it can be exclusive and have issues. But these organizations came about because there was a need. They were on HBCU campuses and they wanted to have an organization that fit their needs. And there were different needs. So the A5A, black and gold. Okay, I gave them a little gold. Alpha Kappa Alpha, woo, woo. Pink and green. Kappa Alpha Psi, red and white. Omega Psi Phi, I was on the Omega Court back in the day. That's purple and gold. Delta Sigma Theta, red and white. Phi Beta Sigma and Zeta Phi Beta, blue and white. Sigma Gamma Rho, purple and gold. Iota Phi Theta, I'm not familiar with that. And I believe that they were gold and had to have been purple. Just wanted to give them shouts. If there wasn't a need, this would not have been created. Why has the ask yourself, still have institutional racism, fear and loss, fear of genetic annihilation, numeric disadvantage, unearned privilege, political power, the loss of economic control, control of what? Policies, practices, and laws that govern us, that maintain the structure, that are corroded. And you know they're corroded because of the situation that Congress is in now. We don't have time to go through all that. Okay. This is my image of a cast. I had fun putting this together, people. I just sat outside one day and my mind just went crazy. White supremacy, what do I put in the middle? KKK, Nazis, and white nationalists, and a whole bunch of other folks. On top of we the people with the American flag, and stamped from the beginning is caste. This is no anomaly and by accident. This system was intended for the rich. White privilege is understood. I don't know if you can step up, but I have my day. Between fractured and unjust, you got caste, we the people, and then in between that, White House, foundation of the United States, white privilege. I should have put white supremacy. Okay. So we understand that there is discrimination, disparities, massacres, lynchings, police brutality, and sanctioned violence that comes out of the policies, practices, and laws and institutions of this country. And who are those that are not the benefactors? You have enslaved Africans and their descendants, indigenous people, people of religious differences that are not Christian, immigrants, LGBTQ, and women. A more perfect union, I said it's a lie. It has not yet been realized. We have a lot of work to do. You saw that crumbling house. It needs a new foundation. And that's what we're fighting for our lives for. My last of these. Trust me, I had fun thinking this up. Saving democracy, that was January 6th. for our people. And then you have taking back, you got 45 down there, taking back what white people built. You're not considering what other people contributed to this and the wealth that was brought to this country, enabling the rise from a ragtag 13 colonies in the late 1700s up to a world power by 1900 within 100 years. There was no accident. There were brilliant minds in planning. I'm not taking that away. But the wealth that produced this, the wealth that Europe has benefited from, has come out of a caste system. When I went to South Africa, I've been there twice for the first time. We had a tour guide and we had gone into one of the gold mines. And this man said, if South Africa stopped giving its gold to England, it would collapse tomorrow. The wealth that's out of the natural resources of the Americas and Africa, it's phenomenal. Okay, we're coming to the end. Statue of Liberty. Last week, I saw Liberty. I woke up at probably about 5 in the morning. It was on. I don't know if you've seen it. It's one, and I've forgotten the guy's name, Bertoli, I think, who built the statue. But in transferring the statue from France to the United States, they had these molds that were casts, and they were pieced together. So I got this idea. So this is what I wrote on that. Like molds cast to construct the Statue of Liberty, this beloved icon represents the best ideals of welcome, inclusion, democracy, and freedom for this country espouses. Though she appears impenetrable, indestructible, and majestic in truth, she has deteriorated from weathering and storms and underwent restoration. Everything needs to be restored and refurbished. America's 400-year-old cast has a foundational belief that the U.S. has a noble history. It has some nobility about its history and strives for a more perfect union, but it's not perfect. And again, when we say the foundation is corrupt, that's what is stopping it. And we have a chance to make it better. In reality, the US caste system is, this is according to me, a metastasized cancer. Rigid in its form, needs to excise its toxic beliefs of white supremacy and its unjust, discriminatory, inherently these practices and laws. I'm saying the church say amen on that. Its 8 pillars continue to erode, those 8 pillars we have gone through, continue to erode our ideals of freedom, democracy, justice, and liberty for all. All of that, all we have to do is look at Congress and the Senate. The votes of not passing voting rights bills. The Supreme Court, in terms of its decadent passing and restricting voting, and certainly coming up with a woman's right to choose. Coming to the end. Origins of our discontent, Isabel Wilkerson said, a caste is a constructed system of oppression. It's hard to believe this beautiful country has that at its undergirding. Frances Welsing said, it's institutional racism and a fear of genetic annihilation. 2 sisters from Howard University. I'm the third. You have the journalist and the writer. You have the psychiatrist, and then you have me. I'm the professor, trying to pull all this stuff together. There is a commonality of what Welsing was saying in the late 60s and 70s, and how Wilkerson has formulated her notion of the caste. That's really important. I want you to get that. Both identify a conscious system in the United States to maintain a white power structure and deny equal access and opportunities to all. And when we talk about a system, we're not talking about an individual, because folks say, I didn't do it. My family, we weren't slaveholders. I understand that. But those who benefit within this general tight system that really restricts mobility and opportunity and access, that's what they're talking about. A conscious system in the United States to maintain a white power structure. All you have to do is look at Mitch McConnell and the Republicans and the vote. They voted for that. They never voted. Equal access and the discussion continues. Oh, finally, picture, because it's been here. Where are my narrators?
I'm here.
We're right here.
Narrators, are you awake?
Yes.
Oh, okay, let me find my paper. Hold on. Wait a minute, papers, where are they? Oh, here it is. We're gonna look at this pretty picture and you know what? I really enjoyed putting these pictures. Look at Kamala and look at that eye and the colors and the babies and the graduates at the top from Howard University. And look at the book, Cultivating the Genius of Black Children. We got brother who played Black Panther. I can't think of his name right now. Look at the little boy who looks like he's flying. Look, these are just beautiful pictures of love. This is the ideal we want for everyone. You got the Obamas over there hugged up and loved up. Love it. I found pretty pictures because I've given you a dismal picture. So this is soothing your heart. So we're going to end with two pieces. And we're going to end with the ending of caste system. Sister Robbie, take it away.
A world without caste. Wilkerson said, in a world without caste, instead of false swagger over our own tribe or family or ascribed community, we would look upon all of humanity with wonderment. The little beauty of an Ethiopian runner, the bravery of a Swedish girl determined to save the planet, the physics defying aerobics of an African-American Olympian.
The brilliance of a composer of Puerto Rican descent who can rap the history of America at 144 words a minute. All of these feats should fill us with astonishment at what the species is capable of and gratitude to be alive for this. In a world without caste, being male or female, light or dark, immigrant or native born would have no bearing on what anyone has perceived as being capable of.
In a world without caste, we would all be invested in the well-being of others in our species, if only for our own survival, and recognize that we are in need of one another more than we have been led to believe. We would join forces with indigenous people around the world, raising the alarm as fires rage and glaciers melt. We would see that when others suffer, the collective human body is set back from the progression of our species. And so Wilkerson said, a world without caste would set everyone free. Robbie.
A world without caste would set everyone free.
A world without caste would set everyone free.
To get Ashe, people? Ashe.
Hey.
Okay, and the last words, these are almost the last words, I know you're tired, will be from Let America Be America Again by Brother Langston Hughes. Woo! Robbie, you're on.
Let America be America again. Let it be the dream it used to be. Let it be the pioneer on the plain, seeking a home where he himself is free. America never was America to me. Let America be the dream, the dreamer's dream. Let it be that great, strong land of love where never kings connive nor tyrants scheme, that any man be crushed by one above. It never was America to me.
Oh, let my land be a land where liberty is crowned with no false patriotic wreath. But opportunity is real and life is free. Equality is in the air we breathe. There's never been equality for me, nor freedom in this homeland of the free.
Oh, let America be America again. The land that never has been yet, and yet must be. The land where every man is free. He also meant women too, okay? The land that's mine, the poor man's, Indians, Negroes, me. Who made America? whose sweat and blood, whose faith and pain, whose hand at the foundry, whose plow in the rain, must bring back our mighty dream again.
Oh, yes, I say in plain.
America never was America to me.
And yet I swear this oath, America will be.
America will be.
America will be.
Ashe.
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 Yebo.
Yebo.
And so as we end this has been, let's give a hand to my narrators. I really thank you. And to me, Berlin, Robbie Jones, Reverend Janet McKeithen, Angela Scott, thank you so much. And Sister Louise Dobbs, who's the IT person personified. Blessings to all of you, and Ashe.
Ashe.
That was beautiful. Thank you so much, Dr. Toni, for that. Man, when you guys hear Dr. Toni, you come to learn. I hope y'all came to learn, because she didn't come to play, right? She really let us see what this world, what Isabel Wilkerson was talking about. And so I'm just so grateful for this Black History Month, and to have her come on and to share with us from the goodness of her heart. Thank you so much. So I guess we're on to, do we have any Q&A, Angela?
I do.
Get it, my sister.
Thank you. I have a couple of comments and some questions. First off, I'm also Divine Nine, Zeta Phi Beta representing here. I just have to
go on, sister. And you got your blue on too. I should have some pink and green on today.
Always represent, right? So I wanted to start with
always, sister.
Thank you. I wanted to start with one comment, and then I had two others. One comment is from Deborah Myers, who says, the systems of white supremacy are self-perpetuating. We must support land back and reparations. Now, I don't know if you had a comment to that, but that was one comment thus far. True. And then I had two others, and these are both coming from me. It's comments and questions. As we look at Black mothers and the rise in maternal morbidity, I myself had a sister-in-law who died 7 days after childbirth. So this is very important to me. What pillar does that specific issue fall amongst the pillars? And then the second question is with respect to our Black Panther Manifesto, and we look at critical race theory and the importance of learning about our history and how our history should be taught. What pillar is that under? So those are my two questions.
Oh, I have to go find my pillars.
I can read them off. I took notes.
Oh, you did? I have to look at my pictures,
Angela, if I may, we read the book Cast as part of the reading group. And I mean, the system in and of itself, and I believe, to answer the first question, it's under, healthcare and how the system is rigged. But let me say this, because as we read it, I never got a real sense of the origin of how CAS got implemented while reading it. But I recently ran into some information, and we dealt with this in church this morning with Pastor Q in relationship to the Old Testament and how a New Testament can more or less bring this back around to where we can at least demand the respect. Of course, it takes looking at the Bible and being, insistent upon how the old is threatening and strangling, and how the new is much more accepting of a free think, and it treats us as brothers and sisters. You know, that's a conversation that I think would benefit if it's repeated, you know, in the coming months, now that we're dealing with Black History Month. Just as a contributor.
Okay. And I'm looking in the book, and I'm looking at the table of contents, and where would this fit in? I don't really see a specific place, but under dehumanization, this just the general degradation. For instance, again, I'm going back to medical apartheid. Even if you go to Amazon and buy a used one for $1.50, read page 2 and 3, and you're sucked in with this book. I use it as a text in classes, and my students, of all the books I used, these students talk about this book even today when I see them, of the information. It talks about the medical malpractice on Black people, but it really talks on page, I think 3 or 4, Martin, in the upper right-hand corner of the page, Martin Luther King says that one of the major issues in health in this country is the health of Black people. So for the general inherent superiority versus inherent inferiority, under that category, I would put health. They don't deserve health care. They don't deserve decent housing. They don't deserve food, proper food. Dehumanization Stigma, because in this book there was, it's been a while since I read it, but they have a medical term for doctors, a medical term for people who were afraid of white people. You had every reason to, because they were doing experimental on Black women. So I don't see a specific category for health. If she were to read this book, and maybe we could on the Supreme Court. We don't want to mess that up. But purity versus I remember my mother telling me she went to and she lived out in Banning near Vegas, and she said the doctor didn't want to touch her. And if I've had an experience with a white doctor, and I just felt I'm not feeling this, and I never went back to him. I want to feel that someone is engaged in who I am. They're concerned about him either. I just inherently felt something that wasn't right for me, and I chose not to go back to that person. And trust me, I want to go to whoever can help me. And I didn't feel these people were genuine in terms of how they treated me and how they regarded me. So I'm thinking so that this purity and looking at those Black as the untouchables and not wanting to touch you, not wanting to care for you. In medical apartheid, Harriet Washington says this one woman, when she was pregnant, she said she got as loud as she could because they said they didn't feel pain, and she wanted to make sure they knew she was feeling pain. So there might be another category, a subcategory under that, but I would say in dehumanization and in inherent superiority, and even in divine will, that we were brought on this earth to serve with very little. So that's that we were in this caste, and your needs are minimal. I mean, we can make it work. We can find a category, and I hadn't thought about that. But certainly health and our mental health, our physical health, these are certainly glaring issues, critical issues that have to be solved. Black morbidity, okay, land back. Oh, the land back and the reparations. You know, Bruce's Beach, oh, we're happy about Bruce's Beach, but I bet you have an equivalent of Bruce's Beach in Santa Monica. Now, who's gonna give up their land? Oh, this is an issue. When I came back, there were problems in Zimbabwe, farmers and the Black farmers wanting to claim their land. And it was a consideration in South Africa. How can you prove 100, 200 years ago that your land was taken from you and that you haven't worked that land, but someone else has benefited from that land? In 2011, when I was in South Africa, I went to Cape Town, and there's an area called District 6, I believe. District 6 was some choice land, and it had a nice view, and the Blacks were taken off the land and thrown into the Bantu stands in dry, arid land. And so when I was there, they had a museum, and they were coming back to this community that they had been kicked out of. and finding a way they were making a way for these people. So I interviewed one guy, and his mother was coming back, and he says, I'm not coming back. So we know that this reparations and this kind of thing of restoring the land to its rightful owners is a global issue that those who were the colonizers don't really want to deal with. How it's solved, I don't know. I know there's a book called The Debt by Randall Robinson that came out like 1995, somewhere around in there. And at the end, he says, we're not asking for every Black person to get the money, but we are looking for support educationally, health, those kinds of things. Everybody doesn't need it, but some people do. So there are ways of handling it. But if you deal with some reparations here in the United States, you better deal with some reparations on the continent of Africa, because there's been a brain drain and a drain of its people and a taking of the land. See, this is uncomfortable. This presentation is uncomfortable, and y'all ought to be tired. And I've worked for about a week and a half on all of this. It's a difficult topic, and how do you solve it? And it has to take the well of good-minded people such as this organization and get down to the uncomfortable parts to talk about. And that's what Wilkerson has done in this book. And that's what Frances Welsing did in 1970 when she wrote the Crest Theory of Color Confrontation. And people talked about her like she was crazy. And now here we're looking at her concepts being used and refined. She was way ahead of her time, but she sat back and she was such a video that we had yet been ready to see. And now caste has come in its form to make a strong point. Ibrahim Kendi's book, Stamped from the Beginning. Like, again, I just got and he says something about, he's not talking about institutional racism, he's talking about formative concepts that have instilled these racist notions in the mind. That's what I think is some of the stuff that he's talking about. There are so many books coming from so many issues. I just happen to not bad now, but this woman can write. And again, if you have read Warmth of Other Suns, was a different kind of book. It was about the migration. The African American Museum years ago had From Field to Factory. I love that exhibit. And it dealt with the migrations from the early 1900s into moving into the 1940s, 50s. And the drain out of the South, leaving the agrarian South, coming to the industrial North. That's the whole story of my family and practically every Black person I know. So Warmth of Other Suns is like reading our family stories. This piece is looking at the nuts and bolts and the dishonesty inherently in the structure of this country and its racist practices that have held people down. You never know what this country would be like if things had been altered. And as we say, in a world without caste, we all can, as Rodney King said, can we get along? Can we work together? Can we build something great? If this country is considered great now, imagine what it would have been had there not been slavery and the stealing of land and suspicions that have arisen over centuries in this country. We don't know because, and we're so in it. Like I remember when I was teaching, there was a metaphor. It said it was a goldfish and he was hanging up the bowl, and say a fish doesn't know it's wet until he's taken out of his culture. Essentially, we have to be taken out of this setting to really sit back and analyze what it is and how we can make it better. All I know when I'm looking at CNN and MSNBC, it's discouraging to see those crazy people on Capitol Hill who are so adamant on these rules and the filibuster and really people in progress. The Build Back denied parents help with babysitting, tuition-free community colleges. How are you going to pay for it? Wait, stop sending people up in space. I can pay for it. Stop sending those bombers over there. I mean, there are many ways to do this.
So that's great. I don't think we have any more questions for you, Angela. We've gone over time, I think, a little bit, but it's always wonderful with Dr. Toni. We could stay another 3 hours, and I'm sure she could too. You know, but we will have her back sometime, I'm sure. I would love to, and I'm sure most of us would. We've got a lot of hand claps on the screen of her coming back. So yeah, we love you, Dr. Toni. You said you had a closing for us. Do you have something that, because normally
We did
out,
close.
we close out. Oh, we did. Okay, because we close out with a little bit of
Let
our
America be America. Let America be America.
okay, America. Let America be
A bit of what?
we do the Assata Shakur chant.
Oh, I don't know that.
Okay, well, you about to learn.
Tell me.
Okay, well, I don't know, Angela, are we gonna mute everybody or okay, thank you, Trisha Kochi. She says, or Dr. Trisha Kochi, she says, thank you for having this tonight. So we mute everybody, Angela, or should we take everybody off mute? What do you think, guys?
I'm muted, aren't I?
I think we might be safe now. Yes, it's fine.
I think we might be safe.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, we're good.
Okay. So this is how this goes. Everybody can unmute themselves. And I'll read the, it's a very short chant that we say, but I'll read it and then everyone will, I'll say it first and everyone will respond. And we'll just take it higher and higher. We do it 3 times. So it goes like this. It is our duty to fight for freedom.
It is our duty
to fight for freedom.
It is our duty to win.
It is our
It is our
duty
duty
to
to
win.
win.
We must love and protect one another.
We must
We must
love
love and protect one another.
We have nothing to lose but our chains.
We have
We have
nothing
nothing
to
to
lose
lose
but
but
our
our
chains.
chains.
Okay, take it up a notch. It is our duty to fight for freedom.
It is our duty to fight for freedom.
It is our duty to win.
It is
It is
our
our
duty to win.
For
We
freedom.
must love and protect one another.
We must love and protect
protect
one another.
We have nothing to lose but our chains.
We have
We have nothing to lose but our chains.
All right, City Hall got their ears on. Let's go. We shouted to City Hall, both City Halls. How about LA and Santa Monica? It is our duty to fight for freedom.
It is our duty to fight for freedom.
It is our duty to win.
It is our duty to win.
We must love and protect one another.
We must
Love and protect one another.
We have nothing to lose but our chains.
We
We have
have
nothing to lose but our chains.
Ashe.
Ashe.
Hey, give another ashe and a yay-bo.
Ashe.
Ashe.
Yay-bo.
Amen.
Good
Thank
night,
you, everybody. Thank you for coming, everybody.
everyone.
Good to see you, Laverne. Good to see you, Laverne.